Thank you for joining us at Live at the Mall. Today we're going to talk about what makes a great and poor website. This is in conjunction with Travel Mall's 2008 Best Asia Web Awards. The shortlist nominees are available for viewing if you'll click on the banner at the top right of your website. The winners will be announced March 18th at the awards luncheon held at Suntec Convention Center in Singapore in conjunction with the i4Travel Summit. For those of you who are not registered for i4Travel Summit and are interested in travel technology distribution, you should do so. If you have some questions that you wish our panelists to answer, please enter them to the right of the video box. And at the end of our session, I will select some of your questions for our panelists to address. Now let's take a break for a message from one of our sponsors. When we return, we will have each of our guest panelists tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do.
Green Globe's new standards also look at the social and cultural issues within destinations. So ensuring that the delivery of tourism, especially into least developed economies and developing economies, achieves much greater benefit to local communities. In the broad sense, the UNWTO agenda is underpinned by the standards and processes involved in Green Globe.
But everyone's attention is turning towards, I call it the commercialization of green. That doesn't mean taking advantage of it, but it does mean that there is an opportunity to actually do business for profit. So certification, I think, will become part of living on this earth. And so again, what we have in the brand is international recognition already.
Even though I think it has achieved a lot in the 15 years, it's only just starting.
Right now, I'd like to first, then, let's go around and introduce our guests. We have Liz Craig. Liz is the founder and CEO of One Globe Network. She's based in Paris and Boston. Welcome, Liz.
Hello, how's everyone?
And then we also have Graham McKenzie, who's the Managing Director of Travel Mall UK. Welcome, Graham.
Hi.
And we also welcome Joe Buehler, who is the Senior Destination Marketing Analyst for Focusrite and also Principal of Buehler Works. Welcome to the panel, Joe.
Thank you, Charlie. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Rick Treves, who is partner of Water & Stone, which is a web development company based in Bali, Indonesia. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Charlie. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
First question I have, let's address this to Liz. Liz, this is the 5th year now, I think, that you have overseen and will again be judging the Travel Mall UK Best Awards. What do you see as the most significant changes over the past 5 years in website capacity?
Okay, on the websites themselves, really good question because it has been significant evolution. I think probably everyone here would agree the booking capabilities have really progressed from simply finding a date and finding a rate or finding availability to the ability to scan dates, month view. You can pull up rates more quickly. So the booking technologies themselves, while embedded within the site, certainly have made a difference in terms of how educating the consumer on how a good booking or how a good site should operate. So booking technologies. The second thing that that I'm seeing the start of that is completely different than 5 years ago is the ability for the client to mix and match more amenities at this point than actual dynamic packaging, but between being able to search rates and then being able to add certain things that are preferences like free Wi-Fi or order, champagne on arrival. Customers are now, they're in control for sure, but more and more shaping what they choose to experience or what they choose to buy. The third small thing are what I'm calling mini apps, small applications that previously had been very expensive and therefore not affordable to independent travel agencies or independent hoteliers. And probably a key example is the use of YouTube, which of course is free. The quality is an issue, but compared to 5 years ago, the only type of video that was broadly available were the expensive ones like the 360 tours, etc. So those three areas are the things that I see have changed the most.
What's new and exciting at One Globe nowadays?
Well, thank you for asking me to start with. I appreciate this. We are seeing and working on digital services for handheld devices. So moving beyond the website is what's exciting. And happily, the clients now recognize that websites are too static or too constrained an environment and are willing to try different things, blogs and YouTubes and all sorts of things that permit them to be more engaging of clients. So the mobile devices, the ability to test new applications, these mini apps that I talked about that permit people with small budgets to do big things, which I think is just great. And we also have some efforts in China for the independent Chinese traveler to Europe. We have a portal for them, which of course they're a highly handheld, mobile-driven market, and so that's how those two tie together. But anyway, it is a very exciting time.
In your view, what do you see as the most significant changes over the past 5 years in customer engagement in terms of website capacities, supporting technology, customer engagement? Rick, can you address one of these areas that you have a strong opinion about?
Well, I think that the big change that we've seen across the last 5 years in Internet technologies has been really the rise of the content management system and what this does for website owners. It really turns the web channel into something that is affordable and manageable by small and medium-sized firms. It's no longer solely the province of large firms. The reason this is important for the consumer is it tends to level the playing field and put more and richer information into their hands.
So content management system, this would mean the basically a database system that talks to the website. It's linked to the website.
Well,
it becomes dynamic.
They've become much more advanced over the past few years. While originally they were purely a tool that allowed you to interface easily with the database, now they're actually something that allows you to control your content in a wide variety of formats, both rich media, which is increasingly popular, and of course standard content pages and traditional database content. But the point is that you no longer have to hire a programmer or a developer when you want to make changes to your site. And in the past, that was the provenance of, six-figure U.S. software systems. But now, with a lot of the open source tools, you can get them for literally nothing in licensing fees. And even some of the commercial platforms are responding to the price pressure and becoming much more affordable solutions. So they're very effective tools that allow companies to have a much more powerful and compelling web presence, and the ROI is very favorable on them as well.
Right. Rick, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Water and Stone, and what does it do, and a few samples of your client base?
Yeah, I'll be happy to, Charlie. Thanks for asking. Water and Stone was started in 2003 when I was living in Bangkok. I was working for a software house there developing content management systems. I've been in the industry since 1999, And about that time, 2003, we saw open source really start to take off, and we saw a market opportunity, and we started this company focusing strictly on open source content management solutions. Over the years, we've worked with some really great people. We've worked with C.B. Richard Ellis, Jones Lang LaSalle, FPD Saddles, BASF, Amari Hotels, and a number of others. So it's treated us quite well.
Well, Rick, you're joining us from Afghanistan. What are you doing there?
Yes, actually, I'm in Kabul as we speak right now. I'm currently on a long-term assignment with an NGO providing consultancy for them to build a B2B marketplace. We're rolling that first product out here in Afghanistan, but after that we're doing East Timor and Haiti, and we're also working on knowledge management systems for United Nations peacekeeping forces. It's very interesting work.
Oh, boy, keep safe, will you?
Thanks. Yeah, we tend to keep our head down here. It's a tough environment.
Well, I think the last 3 to 5 years have, brought quite a lot of changes in the industry. And probably most of those changes were brought about by the penetration of the web into every area that people are engaged in, whether it's shopping online, whether it's communicating with friends, the whole explosion of social networking, social media, user-generated content, the facility of being able to have a conversation online about any topic has really changed business in general. And the travel industry has to cope with this because one of the most favorite thing people are probably talking about with their friends and in their social circles is about their travel, their vacations or holidays. So there has been a whole transformation, and it has resulted in basically what some people are calling radical transparency. In other words, there is nowhere that you can hide as a travel provider or travel supplier. If you deliver great service, then it's easier for people to make you famous and successful. And on the opposite range, if you provide bad service, you really are exposed very immediately on all sorts of sites. Of course, TripAdvisor being probably the most prominent in the travel industry, but others, cropping up as well. If somebody had a bad experience with somebody in travel, it can be all over Facebook with, thousands of people knowing about it immediately. So I think that's been the most radical change in the last few years, and quite frankly, we haven't seen anything yet because this is going to continue, and with new technologies making it probably even easier for people to, to control how brands are perceived. So the old marketing saying that, the consumer controls the brand has now become a reality, which is a great challenge for any marketer that has, tried to position their brand in the marketplace.
Tell us a bit about your work with Focusrite, a senior destination marketing analyst, and a bit about BuellerWorks. What does it do?
Right. Well, Focusrite, of course, is probably known to a lot of the audience, a lot of people in the audience. They have become the leader in online travel intelligence, not only about online travel, but also travel in general, with a presence in the U.S., in Europe, and also in India. We are providing research that can be subscribed to, but also custom research for specific clients. And my role there is I'm getting involved if there are projects that destination marketing organizations would like to conduct, or to provide my input into research that we are selling that have to do with the destination space. So that's part of my engagement with Focusrite, who are...
You're a principal in BeulaWorks.
Right. BeulaWorks is my personal consulting arm. It's basically consisting of myself, and I'm more or less now focusing on what I mentioned before, which you can largely or loosely describe as online reputation management, brand measurement online, controlling what is happening, what's talked about your company, and then trying to at least intervene or be engaged in that conversation. You could also describe it as, although it's not really a correct term, as web-based results measurement, which is what PR companies used to do in the old world of traditional media. And this is sort of a new specialty that is moving online. And I'm trying to provide services to companies that are interested in measuring how they are perceived in the marketplace.
Great. Thank you for that, Joe. Graham. Travel Mall Managing Director. As in that role, you produced the Travel Mall Web Awards for the last 5 years. In your view, what do you see as the most significant changes over these years in customer engagement?
Well, I think in customer engagement, I think people are much more knowledgeable than they were 5 years ago. People are using websites as their first reference rather than the second or third. And I think that the purveyors of websites, in terms of the product providers or the service providers in terms of airlines or shipping or whatever it might be, or destinations, are obviously putting a lot more emphasis onto and a lot more money into the look, the feel, and the activities that one can do. For example, e-commerce that one can do on the sites. And you've just quoted an airline site, or perhaps it was an airline search site. They've obviously been going for some considerable time, and they have a finite number of products to sell, whereas the destination often does not. And I think it's in that area that an awful lot of progress is being made. And particularly coming up now, and I think perhaps last year, but certainly this year and the forthcoming years, you'll see the emergence of, for want of a better term, the Web 2 tools, when people are using user-generated content for their websites. They're using reviews from places like TripAdvisor and perhaps their own review software, and using all of that sort of thing to make a much more dynamic, energetic, worthwhile site. And people and users will generally take user content and think it more credible than perhaps copy and video and adverts that are generated by the owners of the websites themselves. So I think it's that change. That's the change that I've noticed in the last 18 months, and I think that change will continue.
And these user reviews and comments, how are they progressing? Where are we now with those?
Well, I think we're getting to a fairly sophisticated level. It's difficult to find anybody nowadays that's going even on a business trip that doesn't have a look at one review site or another as to what other people think of particularly of the hotel, but potentially of the destination or the environment in which they're going into, to make sure that it's okay. Potentially they do that before they book, and therefore the importance of it is increased. And I think that anybody that's in the travel industry now that doesn't take note of that, doesn't listen, if you like, to what people are saying on the web about them, are making a big mistake.
And now for a message from one of our sponsors. We'll be right back.
The world of online travel is growing and changing exponentially, and we all know the benefits. Customers have much easier tools to research and book accommodation, And you, as an accommodation provider, can potentially reach markets much further and wider than ever before. What if you could clearly track results from each of your reseller channels? Let's go one step further. What if you could accurately predict demand and adjust pricing automatically without lifting a finger? We've listened. We know you've endured sleepless nights worrying about distressed inventory and worse, overselling inventory. What if you could just set and forget your inventory and know that you will never oversell, you will always get the highest possible price across all reseller portals, all of your available inventory is shared across the reseller portals you choose, you can track and monitor how well each reseller channel is performing. Welcome to a paradigm shift in online travel distribution.
Now let's talk about what efforts did not work in the last 5 years or did not work so well. If you could maybe cite one or two examples. Joe, some thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it's been interesting that, a few months ago there was a Forrester study saying that, people are moving away from online travel sites, online travel agency sites. And, of course, the media immediately started to overhype it again, calling it a way back to the real travel agent, which, of course, is not going to happen. But I think the user expectations by other websites over the last few years have been heightened, and the online travel companies are finding it harder to exceed those expectations because their websites haven't really changed that much. So I think there has to be a next wave of technology investment and technology adaptation by the players to make the user experience better for the whole online travel buying process. So content is becoming, in a way, second to the user experience. So, some of these efforts obviously are defensive, that Liz mentioned, because the companies might not want to, or maybe they don't have the technology that it would require to make it a better experience. Some of the best new technology actually comes again from outsiders, search-based companies like Kango. So it's pretty quickly happened that the former leaders of the industry are now sort of already defending the status quo. So it's interesting to see what happens over the next year or two, of who will capitalize on some of the new technology and introduce it in travel.
Interesting. Graham?
Well, I think it really depends on what your site is aimed at, but I think the sites that the big sites, the big corporates can probably look after themselves with regard to pay per click and search engine. And where search is so important, I think that's modified the way that some sites have looked. I think, heavy flash front ends, things like that, where perhaps the search engines don't look kindly upon them for search engine optimization. All of those types of things have had to take their place, if you like, over the past 4 or 5 years. And I would agree also with Joe, is that whilst content is still very, very important, I think the use of that and the presentation of that content and the ease of which you can gain access to it is also very important. And those are the things that really changed over the last 4 or 5 years. So a simple, bland booking engine type website probably isn't going to kick it anymore. You've got to put a little bit more effort into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's sort of like, there is one theory that says the homepage is dead. Of course, people still go to the home pages, but a lot of traffic of sites, because it's generated by search, is now landing on any sort of interior page. So I think websites have to, evolve, and the content, has to be presented wherever it's accessed by the customer. So, yeah, I think what definitely happened is that some of these very design-focused sites, using the latest flash technology and all the bells and whistles, are not really serving the purpose, because if you're in the business of doing business, travel online, maybe stripping it down to the essentials, but making that a great experience is more important than having all these, latest things that maybe some web agencies are selling you, on your site.
Rick, do you have a couple of comments on this, please?
Well, I think that it's hard to point to things that are absolute deadpan failures globally, because there's such differences in diversity in the populations around the world, their hardware situations, their bandwidth situations. On that latter point, the digital divide in Asia is a real factor that we have to deal with, that people in North America or Europe really don't have to worry about. You look at major websites like CNN, for example, and you're seeing more and more video go on there and less print media content, or I should say a higher percentage of video content. In lots of places in Asia and South Asia, we simply can't experience that yet. And I think that it's a bit of a stumbling block for people who are trying to enter this market who are used to North American sensibilities or European sensibilities. Would I say it's an outright failure? No, it's simply that, we're not there yet. Eventually we will be.
Your thoughts on, or predictions on, what the future customer expectations are from travel tourism websites as it relates to any time, any device, dynamic packaging, social context. Graham, would you like to tackle one of those areas?
Sure. I mean, I think that the expectation often is driven by what you're trying to buy, and I think the expectation, if you're buying an airline ticket, may be different if you're trying to book an eco-friendly lodge in the middle of the Amazon. And I think the expectations are different because the products are different. Some are commoditized. You can run stock control against them and everything else. And to buy an airline ticket from, say, London to Paris is relatively easy. It's a simple product. You know what you're going to get. But I think buying an eco lodge in the middle of the Amazon is different. And therefore, I think the expectation is that we go back to some of the points we made in the previous question, is that the content has got to be presented differently. It's got to give reassurance. It's got to be attractive. And I think it's got to be available, across multiple distribution channels. And that distribution channel could be kiosk, could be web, could be mobile, could be PDA, it could be broadcast TV. It's basically using the same content, but across multiple distribution channels, I think, and that's what people are beginning to expect.
Liz, what's your take on this?
Very similar, as a matter of fact. The telecom companies in Europe were talking about not just mobile, but the ability to connect anywhere, anytime, from any device. So I'm saying basically the same thing, or reconfirming what Graham is saying. People are just much more flexible and more free and more skilled at numbers of devices. So I see
it's called Martini Media.
Martini Media, okay.
Martini Media, anytime, any place, anywhere.
Joe, could you address maybe the dynamic packaging and/or social context aspect of expectations?
Well, I think dynamic packaging has sort of, disappeared from the vocabulary a little bit, and I think my take on this is that most of the players are actually embarrassed that they are no longer, talking about it, because nobody has really offered it and taken on the challenge. Because now they are focusing again on trying to sell what they can sell with existing technology, which is very much legacy-based. And, of course, with the new wave of user-generated content, social networking, and so on, the focus has shifted away a bit. My take is that dynamic packaging, the way I defined it with some others 7 years ago, is that it has to go into the direction of one-stop shopping if you really want to succeed with it. And there is no technology on the horizon right now that actually would allow a company to do that. Graham mentioned the airline ticket from A to B and the Econolodge and the Amazon. And there is sort of a big disconnect between the two. There are still too many travel sites that allow you to do one but not the other, which has led, of course, to some of the disappointment on the consumer side, because the customer basically would like to buy all that stuff on one website, and they basically can't. So that's one issue that needs to be addressed if we want to get to the next level of truly combining the planning and researching of travel online with the buying of the necessary products. So it goes away from commodity type component buying to a vacation package buying, and by package I mean a dynamic package. So that's a big issue. As far as mobile, I think it's basically a time and place type issue. I can see that mobile devices will be used for buying that airline ticket from A to B. I doubt that you are really going to buy the vacation experience on a mobile device. But again, you're going to use the mobile device when you are at your destination and you need time-sensitive information or location-specific information. That's where I think mobile is playing a role. Just to mention one thing, the iPhone has just had 100,000 downloads of their development kit by developers within about 2 days of announcing it. So there's going to be a lot that will happen on mobile devices.
And still the point comes up again that there needs to be more technology development before dynamic packaging would meet what customer expectations for smooth, transparent booking of their entire trip.
Rick, how about you?
I think anytime any device is really an exciting area. Frankly, the iPhone and Wi-Fi is changing everything. It's really opening up a new area for a lot of people. The promise of 3G has never really been fulfilled, but statistics show that iPhone users are accessing those services at a disproportionately high rate. And with a lot of cities providing Wi-Fi service in a wide variety of locations, I think we're going to see an increasing demand for mobile content management and for cross-platform content solutions. And I think it's going to drive adoption in a wonderful, wonderful circle. The devices, the content, the devices, the content.
And to what degree, Rick, has the whole mobile revolution being taking hold in Asia?
Well, I mean, here I am in Afghanistan, and on every street corner there's guys selling phone cards. There's people here driving donkey carts that have mobile phones. It's a different situation. So mobile is largely shaping what's happening not only in South Asia but also in Southeast Asia. We're getting quite high penetration rates of mobile devices. The costs are dropping on those devices. The functionality is increasing. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi access, and of course GPRS is not really much of a success story, but with the Wi-Fi access trailing the higher demand for bandwidth-driven content is low, but we will see that changing as well. Of course, if we go to Singapore, we go to Hong Kong, it's a different story. There people are using their mobile devices, and I mean more than just BlackBerries. They're using things like iPhones and richer media experiences. So I do think that it's a driver. I do think it's something that's going to continue to grow, and I think that companies need to be looking at content solutions that can cater to those platforms, or they're going to miss out.
And now for a commercial break.
The buzz and excitement surrounding this event is incredible, with numbers already far in excess of last year's total. It will be a networking goldmine. Deals will be done, partnerships made, and parts of the future's Asian travel distribution landscape shaped. If you don't attend, you will certainly miss out on a handful of business opportunities. Over 500 senior travel professionals have already booked, and over 750 will be attending over the 2 conference days, making it a guaranteed networking hub. With over 65 speakers and 3 enlightening agendas covering distribution technology, sales and marketing, revenue management, and travel distribution forecasting, this event is a must-attend for senior travel professionals looking to position their business for future success. This year we have partnered with TravelMole for the Travel Web Awards Asia 2008. The results and presentations will be announced during the summit.
Moving to the next item is let's talk about best practices out there without sameness. Is there enough innovation you think that out there, and can you cite some examples of best practices without sameness? Liz, would you like to start?
Oh, sure, absolutely, thanks. As Graham mentioned, the best practices and innovation that I'm seeing is coming from outside our industry. People like Burton Snowboards have done a fantastic job of permitting people to integrate their own action videos. And Amazon, of course, with their recommendation database technologies. Those experiences are hopefully going to translate into our business. The short answer is no, I don't see enough innovation because the clients are, any users are being educated by other types of sites that are really far and away either more exciting or more useful or more participatory. But I think we'll catch up, travel and hospitality.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I think, I would maybe add to what Liz said with Netflix, their recommender engine. I think I agree, the travel industry, which is still the largest online segment, e-commerce segment, sort of has to become more innovative. And it's probably going to, as I said before, come from some of the outside disruptors who, maybe former Google employees or former Yahoo. I think I mentioned Kango, which is, integrating the semantic web with personalized hotel search based on your likes and dislikes and preferences. So that has to become much more mainstream. But again, these type of sites need to be integrated with the actual purchasing capability, because otherwise the consumer will just have more sites than they have today that all give them a small part of what they would like to have in in an easy integrated process. But I think a lot of the innovation probably will come from outsiders rather than from the establishment in the online travel industry.
Graham, what's your view on this?
Well, I think there is obviously lots of innovation outside the travel industry, but I think one of the things that has perhaps happened, which we haven't discussed in the last couple of years, is the rise of the recommender sites and not so much the recommender sites, but the review sites like TripAdvisor. And I see more and more innovation of that because, be it business or be it leisure travel, people want to talk about where they've been. People want to talk about good and bad experiences. And I think that, if you like, the conversation economy as far as travel is concerned will increase all the time and become much more specialist. In other words, people that are interested in, say, mountain biking holidays will have their own social networking site relevant to travel. People that are interested in eco-travel or responsible travel, the same, sports travel, you name it. And all of these sites will, I think, the innovation will come where they have their own social networking and commentary and review sites within their own industry. And I think that's one innovation that we'll see. If we haven't seen it already, it will come very, very shortly. And I think there are some other things, but I think sort of being at the bleeding edge rather than at the leading edge is probably where travel sites are coming from, rather than coming up with fantastic new technology. And I think mapping is another area that perhaps there's some room for manoeuvre and room for development. dynamic mapping and all of those types of things that are really on the cusp, I would say, of being adopted by and being used by a wider variety of people. And that also then moves into the mobile devices. So, for example, on a lot of the phones that are coming out now, there are built-in GPS systems. So even if you're walking somewhere, you can get your phone to tell you which way to go and stuff like that. And they have a relevance, I think, as far as innovation and as far as travel is concerned.
So in terms of best practices, there's quite a bit happening, and I think that we're seeing an increased demand for standardization and for improvement of practices. This is good across the board for the industry. It's good across the board for the consumers. I mean, even if you look at the Blu-ray example, there we saw a situation that could have been a long, hard, dirty fight between two different formats. The consumers really don't benefit in that situation. But no, we've seen now consolidation of that market, and the consumers are going to benefit. The same is also true of things which are probably less visible to consumers, for example, web coding standards. We are seeing more developers sensitive to those things and sensitive to things like accessibility, so that all people, regardless of their physical capabilities, are able to access media. So I do think that this is something we want to encourage. I do think that it's something that, though it doesn't get a lot of press, is actually good for the consumers and good for the companies. As far as specific examples, aside from the Blu-ray situation, it's really hard to pull out anything that's terribly compelling right now.
Well, thank you so very much, everybody. I really appreciate this, and we will be having further live at the mall discussions on this or similar subjects, with the first one to take place after we announce the winners of the Asia Best Web Awards, and look forward to having you join us again.